It's Reality Check with Craig Price.
I'm an idiot.
4 minutes in and I'm already wrong.
I'm like a monkey. Hello, look at me.
Craig, shut up.
Hey, I need you guys to do these things.
I'm Craig Price, professional bastard. Nice to meet you.
It's Reality Check with Craig Price. This week, Stephanie Vance comes on the show to discuss lobbying and lobbyists. Look, lobbyists don't have the best reputation on earth. I mean, they rank right below lawyers and serial killers, right? I mean, well, lawyers and lobbyists rank below serial killers in popularity in America, but what I mean is, when was the last time you saw a movie based on lobbyists that wasn't on a true story? I mean, they're not making miniseries and TV shows on lobbyists and the art of lobbying. But then again, lobbyists have their place in the political system. They're there for a reason. Sadly, all we hear about are either the horror stories of corruption or big corporations throwing money around, using them to get their way, when in fact, if you have a cause, regardless of how big or how small it is, there's probably a lobbyist on Capitol Hill right now fighting for it. And let's be honest again, lobbyists are this largely mythic element to the political system. They're kind of like the Bigfoot. We've seen pictures of them. People talk about them all the time. But what do they actually do? I mean, obviously, besides slide cash across the table to a politician, what do they do? Now, I am prejudging, so I don't want to do that. But do you know how lobbyists works? Do you know how it actually helps the American public? I don't know anything about it. I mean, really, I know little to nothing about lobbying, and which is why I have my guest, Stephanie Vance, on the show to talk about her new book, The Influence Game, 50 Insider Tactics from the Washington, D.C. lobbying world that will get you to yes. To fill me into what lobbyists do and what they don't do. So sit back, count your kickback money, and listen to Stephanie Vance. So this must be your busy. This year must be your busy year.
Well, you know, it's funny. You would think this year would be the busiest year, but actually, for a lot of my work, because Congress isn't doing anything, it's not so busy like the election year.
So what you're saying is you've been not very busy for the last 3 years,
right? No, it's true. I mean, I think my work is so focused on getting Congress to take action or not take action on particular bills that at this time of year, it's much easier to get them to not take action, and we're doing a really, really good job of that.
You're highly effective.
Right, thank you.
Having people not do something is fairly easy. You know what you're doing? Just keep doing that.
Right.
So does it take a lot of convincing to them to not to do something?
No. I mean, actually, it's funny because I always tell people the system is designed to be completely and totally inefficient.
We're doing perfect.
I know, we are. I mean, if you actually look at it, if you ever read the Federalist Papers.
Of course not.
All right.
I did. I was forced to in school, but I know what they are.
You don't have it on your Kindle right now? Or
I have it memorized. Hold on a second.
Okay.
Let me think about it. No, actually, my wife just, for her school, she's getting her degree, and so she just took some government. And she was talking about the Federalist Papers and all that stuff.
Well,
so,
yeah.
I think I paid attention to my wife for a moment.
Pretty awesome documents about, the various branches of government, how they're supposed to operate. And if you look at, for example, Federalist number 10, which is which was like a big one about the legislative branch that Madison wrote, he basically says, let's set up a system that doesn't work. Let's set up a system where everyone fights and argues, and it's very, very difficult to get a resolution. So, if you look at it, very urban members from New York have to agree with very rural members from Alabama before they can actually achieve something, and that's why it's really hard to do.
Well, it's hard to get urban people from New York to
agree
with
anything.
Urban people from New York
Right.
and rural people from Alabama to agree with rural people from Alabama. And I'm here with Stephanie Vance, and you are a lobbyist specialist. You have a great new book out that talks about a little bit of...
Yes, my book is called The Influence Game, and it's the 50 DC insider tactics that will get you to yes. So it's about taking all those things that we in Washington, D.C. do as lobbyists to influence others, not just in the D.C. world, but in sales and marketing without being unethical, manipulating, or bribing. So,
well, first off, you said lobbyists.
I know.
So,
it's a short book.
Listen there, Abramoff. We know, and I want to talk to you about that. And we're definitely going to talk about the content of the book too.
Right.
But I want to talk about lobbyists and lobbying.
Mm-hmm.
because
No one ever does. I'm shocked.
Yeah, I know. Because to me, I understand the concept of lobbyists. You know, there's a group of people that feel they're unrepresented, or they don't have a voice, and they pool their money together. Not through passing the hat, but they get whatever they pay for someone, lawyers or lobbyists, to speak for them.
Right.
But the problem is that now we have whoever's got the most money wins. It seems like.
Well, it seems like that, and I'm never going to erase people's skepticism about money in the political process. Like,
it's never going to.
Yeah, it's never going to happen.
200 and some odd years, they're still concerned about that.
Right. Exactly. So, I mean, some of the things I point out to people are, first of all, everyone has an amazing power to make a difference as a constituent. So, for example,
really,
our firm.
You're going to have to convince me of that.
I am. Our firm schedules lobby days. So we'll bring in, 500 librarians from around the country. And if they give us an address in a congressman's district, we can schedule a meeting. We schedule like 100% of the meetings that we will request for constituents. And they are the ones that the offices really roll out the red carpet for. It is actually harder as a lobbyist to get into a legislator's office than it is as a constituent. And I know people don't believe that, but...
Well, that's because nobody tries.
Exactly. Exactly. And that totally irritates me when people are like, oh, it'll never work. It's terrible. I'm, have you tried?
It's the apathy and indifference that's really screwing this country up. People have a tendency, they'd much rather complain or vocalize, not even complain, just point out a situation.
Right.
And hopefully other people will take care of it.
Right.
Because usually quite frankly, there's always a special interest group, good or bad. Special interest now has a negative connotation, but any group,
everyone's
we have a special interest right now.
Right. I mean, the National Speakers Association, what do we want to do? We want to protect the First Amendment for free speech, except for us.
No, we don't want free speech. We want paid speeches.
Right. But I mean, the National Federation of Independent Businesses, there's so many NSA members that are small businesses or even independent businesses, home-based businesses. I mean, everyone has a special interest in Washington, D.C., and I don't think special interests are bad. They're just special. We could be, if it's not special, it's a common interest. And, if it were a common interest, then everyone could agree to it.
But I guess the feeling is that it is whoever's got the most money wins. Because that's how it feels, because especially with the Citizens United, and they set up these super PACs that are secret money somewhere else, and then they've got other things that go along with the super PAC, so you don't have to claim it, or you don't have to say it, and you can funnel, and it just seems crooked.
Well, it does. And I think the issue is that there's a huge difference between the political campaigns and the electoral process and the legislative process. And, it's frustrating, but it takes money to be elected. I mean, it takes $1 million on average to win a House seat. It takes $10 million to win a Senate seat. And at the presidential level, we're going to have billions that are spent. And so, there's that issue of getting people into office. But in terms of actually influencing those people in office, that to me, constituents, individuals have as much power. There was actually a study done by a group called the Congressional Management Foundation. They asked congressional staff, if your boss hasn't made a decision on an issue, what's going to influence him or her? And it was like a totally, anonymous study. They said in-person issue visits from constituents were number 1, and a visit from a lobbyist was number 5. So there's this whole separation between the electoral process and the legislative process. And it's amazing to me that citizens can actually influence the legislative process, but they see it in the context of getting people elected. And so it looks...
Well, where does that perception disconnect come from?
I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of it's, sort of media portrayals of how much money is being spent on campaigns and how many special interests are involved. And I also think it's what we were talking about. People just have this image that it's not going to work, so they don't try. I mean, it's I always say to people, if you don't vote, you don't get to whine about the process.
Which is not true. That's the great thing about America.
Right.
Is that
you could whine, but I personally don't think your whining is effective.
Do you think it's because most lobbyists are lawyers or were lawyers at one point, and so our natural dislike of lawyers, now that they've become lobbyists, and now because as a lawyer, you don't really affect law directly as much as you do as a lobbyist, or at least perception-wise.
Well, yeah. I mean, and it was funny because when I was graduating from college, people always said, "Oh, you should go be a lawyer," and I'm like, I don't want to be a lawyer. So I
have a soul and a conscience.
Exactly.
Ethics.
Right. So,
but all my lawyer clients, I love you.
Right. And me as well. But I never, I didn't go to law school, and there's a lot of lobbyists who aren't lawyers. But, you know, there is a difference between law and lobbying. I mean, law is really upholding the law, protecting the law, whatever you interpret as the law. Lobbying is trying to make changes to the law. And those are two entirely different things. And I think, you know, the lobbying world really grew up from some First Amendment rights of people being able to petition the government for changes that they wanted to see. So it's not like it came up from, you know, people feeling like, oh, I need to get X amount of money into my particular program. It's that it was really about citizens being able to have a voice. And that's where the whole sort of lobbying genre came from. And so now I think people, you know, think it's been, you know, hijacked by special interests who are horrible. I ask people to think about their own lives, though. If you're a member of AAA, if you're a member of the Sierra Club, if you like puppies and you go to the Humane Society, you are a member of a special interest.
Right.
Everyone is a special interest, and there are people in D.C. lobbying for you. And so, you know, sometimes I'm like, okay, it's a terrible special interest unless it's yours, and then it's a great cause, you know?
Yeah, that's what special interest versus a worthy endeavor.
Right, exactly. But that's how everyone on the planet feels about their own issue.
In politics, I mean, that's how they view the opposition as horrible and theirs as the noble way of life, and vice versa.
Right.
So, what is the actual lobbying process? Because a lot of people don't even understand what it is. We think of lobbying as greasing hands,
right,
or clandestine meetings in parking lots where favors are swapped.
Right. I think that's CIA. I'm not sure that's lobbying.
I don't know, but when I think of a lobbyist, I think of somebody who's just walking in and bribing somebody,
right,
or legally using their money to invest in a campaign of some sort.
Well, yeah. Okay, first of all, if you go into a congressional office and you give them cash,
it's a felony.
Yeah, it's a felony, and you do go to jail, as we've seen with many different lobbyists. To me, the lobbying process is exactly like sales or marketing. You know, you start with knowing what you want. Then you think about who can give that to you. Then you figure out something about that audience. Like, you know, if you're talking to a member of Congress, why are you relevant to him or her? You're relevant because you represent their constituents, you're from their district, you know something about the issues that they're most interested in, you've done some research on that person. Then you develop a message that's, I tell people about the spit technique, which is...
I've seen that with lawyers.
I know. Yeah, and spit on your members of Congress.
Actually, my grandmother's Italian. She uses the spit. She used to do that too all the time.
Well, it's actually an acronym because we love acronyms in D.C.
Oh, yeah.
But the S is specific, the P is personal, the I is informative, and the T is timely. So being specific about what you want, making the message personal, not just from your perspective, but from the audience perspective. Informative, like you have to have the good story, but you also have the facts and figures to back it up. And then the T is timely, like, you know, delivering a message when it's, we would always get calls in our office where someone was yelling at us about how the boss voted. And, you know, I'd be like, okay, did you call us ahead of time? And they'd say no. I was like, that'd be a much better time to get this information about how you felt.
You gotta say it before you vote.
Right.
We can't retroactively go back.
Right, and that's what the timely thing is about. So, you know, and when you hear those words, the spit technique, that's sales, that's marketing, that's traditional, you know, influence and persuasion.
But are you giving presentations? Are you, you know, setting up meetings where you've got a pitch, like a pitch meeting?
Yeah. I mean, if you've had a conversation with a human being, you can do something on Capitol Hill. I mean, you do meetings.
You're assuming there's human beings on Capitol Hill.
Right.
That's your first assumption. Well,
hey, I worked on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, but you're not
wonderful people.
You're talking to the people you're talking to. It's not you, Stephanie. We all know how wonderful you are.
I know. It's hard to see because, you know, we're audio. But no, I think that it's the same way you do anything. You can do meetings. So people come to DC from all over the country and they have meetings, but they can also have meetings in their districts. So legislators have district offices like all around congressional districts, and you can always find where your local office is. So you don't even have to come to DC. Phone calls.
It sounds like that's a recommendation.
I know.
It's like, don't come to DC. Just wait until they go back to your district.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. If you come to DC, do not stand on the left side of the esclator. That just drives us nuts.
Oh, I like it when they stand right in the middle, and then nobody can go anywhere.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. That's first world problems.
Right.
That's not.
Well, my point is more that you don't have to have the expense of going all the way to DC because legislators and staff are in their districts.
It's easier than you think.
Yeah. You can email, you can do phone calls. I mean, to me, the most important thing with not just Congress, but any sort of sales or influence situation is the message is much more important than how you deliver it. And I know that that's backwards. And I know that Marshall McLuhan said that that's not how it is.
I even say this don't disregard the message because you don't like the messenger.
Right, exactly. And, people are like, well, should I do this in email or should I do it by phone call? And I always think like, well, your message isn't really that good, so I wouldn't do it anyway. But
why don't you work on the message?
Right,
Get that polished up a little bit.
Right, and then
polish up that turd and then send it out.
And then you can pick a way of doing it. So.
All right. And now with this thing with the super PACs, because it is different and it has changed than lobbying the way it used to be, to some degree. And I know you're familiar with some of the people involved in some of these super PACs.
Yep.
And especially Colbert has really brought it to the forefront.
He has.
Thank you very much, Stephen.
Right.
I know he's listening.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, because it's you. He's not listening for me.
I know. He and I were like this.
Yep. And he's like that with everybody. He's
right. I know.
he's really he's needy.
Right.
But explain to the person who does, like me. I have a basic understanding of super PACs, but what is the thing that's really causing the biggest problem? Besides is it the unlimited funds? Is it the ability to hide who's paying for them?
Well, I think first of all, I think that one of the distinctions I try to make, and people will think it's a distinction without a difference, but there is a difference between lobbying and electioneering. So again, lobbying is the process of trying to convince the legislature to do something or not do something. And the campaign process is trying to get people into office who would probably agree with your perspective or not. So to me, it's not all looped into one thing. I mean, maybe the overarching thing is politics, but lobbying's one thing, electioneering's another. And while people think that, you walk into a legislator's office and you say, hey, I was just dropping off a check at the campaign office and I thought I'd come talk to you, wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Koch brothers. I mean, I'm sorry, did that come out? I hope they're not listening because I'm in trouble.
Self-editing is important. And I think people see this exacerbated a bit with the super PACs because, the real issue is that, you have the campaign, which is supposed to disclose, the actual legislator's campaign, which is supposed to disclose everything. So someone gives money, you're supposed to say who it's from, what company it's from, who the individual is. There's like limits on how much that goes in.
That's so like Chinese don't invest in a one guy, get a Manchurian candidate.
Right.
They're not supposed to take donations from foreign countries. There is a limit, I guess, for regular political action committee. I don't know about super PACs or at least some of the...
No, that's what I'm saying. Like the regular ones there's limits, there's transparency.
But here it's just...
The super PACs are, you can be an organization that just says, hey, I'm separate from the campaign, completely separate, not coordinated. And we saw with Colbert and Stewart who were not coordinating,
That's right.
quote unquote. And so you can have this separate organization. There's not limits as long as they don't say, I'm associated with Jon Stewart or they don't coordinate with that. Then it's allowed to pretty much do whatever it wants. And, it's because of the whole, corporations are people too. And,
Yeah. But that whole, for me, corporations, yes, I see how they have a right to protect their personal interests, but corporations aren't able to vote. What they can do, and as far as my opinion should be, this is what they should be doing is, yes, they can get their employees to vote. They can get their employees to donate.
Right.
But once they start doing it directly, I mean, you're overwhelming. You're getting 2 votes because I'm the CEO.
Right.
I'm going to give money, which is, as far as the Supreme Court feels, is my freedom of expression, and it's really
Right.
part of the voting process. And then
Right.
I can go vote.
Right.
It's a double whammy.
Well, and I think, I think why people are frustrated with that is because they think, obviously some people have more money than others. So
Really?
those are the people who
I don't hear that at all.
No, really? I mean, we never hear that at NSA.
I never hear that on the street, just in general.
So I think, obviously they feel like the people with the most money are controlling the process. Now, I would say that a lot of the groups I work with don't have either just regular PACs or super PACs. They have no kind of PAC. And yet they're still effective on Capitol Hill. An example I give, you and the listeners have probably heard of Jack Abramoff.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
And that wonderful fedora he's got.
Right. So, he obviously has been the sort of pinnacle of horrible.
He's the poster child for bad lobbyists.
Pretty much. Yep.
He's the evil guy that they pinned on.
We're so proud. Yep. But if you look at what he actually achieved, it's so limited. Like, he didn't get casinos opened. He didn't get the tax breaks he wanted for the companies. There was this whole big thing about the Northern Mariana Islands and whether they were going to be subjected to wage laws. And there was a whole there was a trip and everything. He didn't win on that.
But also a lot of the stuff that he did, if obviously at the time wasn't allowed, but if he had gone through a super PAC,
I still don't think
from what I understand, he could have done all that stuff through the super PAC, and it would have been it would have been legal.
Well, he couldn't have done lobbying through the super PAC.
Right,
I mean, those are separate things. But everything that he wanted to achieve in the legislative process, which is what we care about, what actually gets passed.
So let me get this straight. He's a bad lobbyist who didn't do it right in the second. So he's not only is he just bad because ethically he didn't even do it right in the first place.
Right, and he never achieved what he wanted to do. And
Mm-hmm.
and he was a horrible guy, and he got bribes, and he went to jail. But then I look at a group like the Humane Society, who we're dog people, so
I am,
and they do have a PAC. It gave probably about 5% of what Abramoff ever gave to candidates. They have passed, 28 state statutes and over a dozen federal statutes to help animals. And it's not about how much money they gave to campaigns. It's about how effective they were in their lobbying and not handing cash over to offices, having advocates come in and really deliver the message. So I like to make that juxtaposition because I think, people see Abramoff, oh, it's terrible, oh, it's corruption in D.C., but it did not work.
Right. He was, like you said, he was a double failure. He was
exactly.
He couldn't accomplish his goals, and he was doing it very unethically.
Exactly. And so I'm like, okay, yeah, it was bad. It's a bad example. I mean, I get that he did horrible things, but my whole point is it didn't work.
And he's only one person. It's not like they use him as the poster child.
Right.
So in your new book, you talk about how you can take some of the, I guess it's 50, so one for each state.
Right.
And D.C. can go screw itself,
Right,
and Puerto Rico.
Basically, I live in D.C., so we always have to. We're taxed without representation.
Yeah,
so.
and Puerto Rico, they don't have any input, but they can say they like it or not.
Yeah, and Guam and all those
they
other
don't
places.
count.
Yeah.
But so you got a tip for every state.
Yeah.
And so you're talking about how you can take some of these influence methods
Right.
and apply it to just like at work or at home, or am I going to be able to leverage with my wife some lobbying techniques?
You could get your kids to clean up their room.
No kids,
and
thank God, no kids. Do I look like a person who can handle a child?
I know.
Do I look like a responsible human being?
Well, I always say that, and people are like, do you have kids? I'm like, no.
Yeah, I got dogs. I have plenty of dogs. I'm responsible enough for dogs, pretty much because they can fend for themselves.
And they're hard to influence, I gotta say. They're very influential.
My dogs are very easy to influence if you have puppy snaps.
Ah.
Yeah, they're pugs, so they'll do anything for food. They're whores.
Well, and that's the thing, is you need to know what really influences them. That's one of the strategies.
So the first strategy is know what they do. And actually
Right.
with dogs, it's what they talk about. Are they food oriented or are they toy oriented. Like if you give them what do they respond to?
Right.
So how can we find out what people respond to?
Well, with members of Congress, you show them shiny things. They love that. And
They sound like a murder of crows.
right. No, they with members of Congress, you figure out what bills they've introduced. So I call it knowing what wakes them up in the morning and keeps them up at night. So knowing what wakes them up in the morning are the policy issues they care about, the kinds of bills they've introduced, the kinds of issues that every member of Congress came there to actually do something that he or she loves. And it may not be what you or I love. It may be something totally different. They may be people who, I tend to be on one end of the spectrum, and maybe the folks who came to, balance the budget and nothing else, I'm for balancing the budget, but, sometimes to me, people go a little overboard with that. But that's what they came for. That's what they feel in their heart of hearts is the most important thing to do coming to DC. If you know that, then you know how to structure your message. You go in and talk about how what you want will, in the long run, balance the budget. If you have a member of Congress who loves the environment and wants to protect the environment, then you go in and say, here's how what I'm talking about will affect the environment. So if we were talking about like the National Speakers Association and we were trying to, work on, I don't know, funding for...
Well, let's do something easier. Let's talk about relationships with human beings.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm not speakers. They're not listening. But like a spouse,
right,
or a manager, your
right,
boss.
Right.
Now there is something. What's a good way of finding out? I mean, besides paying attention, which is difficult.
Right. I know.
How can you find what they wake up and what?
Read their biographies. Not their like book length biographies. But
because every boss has to write a 200-page full length biography.
You haven't done mine yet. No, but their bios. If you're trying to get to a manager, usually there's a bio on their website. Something that says, they went to school here, they had this career before they came there. You look at their titles. You can see a lot about how they come at the world from that perspective. And, for example, if you've got someone who volunteers at the local fire department, obviously interested in public service, wants to figure out ways to help the community with some, emergency services or whatever, that's a way to approach them, public safety or whatever perspective you want to.
So find a way to tie it in. Exactly.
The other ways I suggest are, obviously LinkedIn, not everyone, but many people are on LinkedIn, but a lot of people I don't think use it effectively.
Oh, sure. I don't.
I know, I don't either. But
we know we don't.
But we know we don't.
Yeah, so at least we're more self-aware than we should be.
Exactly. But, type in that person's name, see who they know, and then learn something about the people who they know. It's a little bit like online stalking. But, if you see, they have these particular friends in common and, all those friends are, associated with a particular organization in the community or whatever, you start to get a sense of what they're interested in. The other way to do it is to get to know their assistants and ask. Oh. I know.
It's being direct is usually the most obvious and the least utilized.
I know. Just say, hey, I know you work with so and so. Like, what are some of the things they like? And you don't have to do it in a creepy way, and they'll usually tell you.
Well, give me an example of another one of your. Now we've got 49 left. See,
I know.
We got 49 left, and we've got about 5 minutes. So
right.
We're gonna come.
Don't be a Nigerian prince. Circle the wagons.
Don't be a Nigerian prince.
Oh, that's one of my favorites. So many people, we all do this. Send out blast emails. And, yeah, we try to pretend they're personalized. We put in that personalization software that drives me nuts.
Yeah, I've seen that. Where they end up, what happens is especially if they import it from a spreadsheet or something,
right? Their
name is screwed up because United now. Continental used to be kind of. I got on their mailing list and somehow my name is Craig Mister. Craig Mr.
Right.
Price.
Right.
Because if someone inputted it incorrectly. And so it really shows you care when you've got horrible misspellings on every ticket I purchase and every email I get.
And that's the thing is just don't even try, you might as well just send a blast email, because that screams, I don't really give a crap. But so many people try to influence legislators and others by what I call being a Nigerian prince. When you send those like, "Hi, you've won $1 million," and it's a numbers game kind of thing. Like if I send this out to, 400 people, maybe one will come back with something that is useful to me. But on Capitol Hill, that doesn't work. It's all about quality, not quantity communications.
Really?
It
seems counterintuitive.
It's counterintuitive
to what they say to us.
Well,
you know what I mean? Because what they say to us sounds often contradictory to their own statements. That's why I love the Daily Shows, because people forget that they get videotaped. And so they will say something, and then that directly opposes something they said. And sometimes it's like 4 days later. It's not like they have to go back 10 years. It's like they say they forget that people are paying attention.
Well, and it's funny you mentioned the Daily Show, because one of my tactics is to not walk into any congressional office, or it's an example through Congress, and say, well, what you're telling me can't be right. I heard Jon Stewart from the Daily Show say otherwise, because it is fake news.
Sure, that's yes.
And it's like any, they take some things out of context and whatever. And I'm not going to say members of Congress don't, flip flop or whatever. Of course they do. But so much of what you need to do is to really understand where that particular person is coming from, see their perspective, see it in the whole context. And yes, if they're flip flopping, you go to them and say, hey, well, you said this in one case and this in one case, like, which one is accurate. But you're not going to do that by, just sending in 100 emails that all say the same thing, that aren't really related to that particular situation. So,
well, in the few short minutes we've got left, of the 48 that are left, what do you think is the key thing to influence other people that you can use every day?
Every day.
Without being like hypnosis that's not like
right.
That's not low on the list, is it?
Carry cash around and
you filled out the last. I got 47 really good ones, but 48 is going to be hypnosis. 47 is going to be bribery.
Right. No, I mean, I always think the most important is to know where you want to go yourself. I mean, we all talk about SMART goals, and it's become cliche. I think, though, so many people go into any influence situation, and if someone says, what can I do to help you? They don't know the answer to that question. And you have got to know, here's specifically what I want from this. And it's not always I want the sale. Sometimes it's I want to build a relationship, or sometimes it's, I want to make sure that I can come back to you in a few weeks when I know that, you've got another situation and I can work with you. Or we were talking about speaker referrals. Sometimes it's I want to make sure I can recommend someone to you that's going to be useful to you. And then, we can, maybe you'll recommend me at some point or whatever. So it's really knowing what you want out of every situation, out of every meeting, out of every email, out of every phone call, making sure you have that goal in mind. That's what is the genesis of everything.
You got to hold the hand through the process, because they're not going to be able to expect to read your mind.
Exactly. I mean, they're looking at the world from a completely different perspective than yours. And so many people go into influence situations with their blinders on. Like, you need to know what you want, but they're like, this is what I want. This is all I want. I don't care what the other person wants. Like, in lobbying, the most successful lobbyists are win-win kind of people. And again, it sounds cliche, but they find those situations where not only do they win, but the other one wins, or at least everyone is equally unhappy.
Well, I hope you're not equally unhappy. Stephanie, I really appreciate you being here. Where can they get the book?
Wherever books are sold, and if you don't find it there, then demand they have it. But it's
and it's called again?
The Influence Game. By
Stephanie Vance.
There you go.
On Amazon.
Barnes & Noble.
If you can find one in your neighborhood.
Right. Books A Million.
It's ebook as well.
It's ebook.
Get it for your Kindle.
Yeah.
And I know you speak all over. Where can people find you?
If they go to advocacyguru.com, they will see a whole bunch about me. And I also have a site specific for the book at theinfluencegame.com.
Well, since we are at NSA conference and it's late at night, I think we should start getting under the influence.
Exactly. Let's go and do that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
I want to thank Stephanie once again.
Great information, even better person who I can now claim as a friend. I'm not sure she will admit that, but I will certainly take claim as her, as she's a great person. Remember, you can find the show on iTunes. Leave a review if you can. Email me at craig@speakercraigprice.com with questions or comments. Like the Facebook page, and we'll see you next Tuesday.